All right. What is up? Chris and Friends podcast, episode number 16. I'm here with my friend Flo Zurkinden. As you can see, though, I was going to take notes here. I was going to make a plan. But then I just decided, let's get into this and start talking about some interesting stuff. So, Flo Zurkinden, you said the name is German. What does that stand for again? What did you say?
I think it means to the children.
To the children.
Yeah.
Now, are you from?
I'm from Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Originally.
How long did you live in Switzerland?
My first 20 years.
Really? So how did you make the trek over here? Long story or no? No?
Yeah.
Are you going to pass? No.
Do you want to talk about that?
I'll give you one pass on the question, I guess.
I got engaged.
Okay.
I got engaged to my now ex-husband. And
Then you stayed?
I stayed.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I have 2 kids.
Right.
So, and I'm really, like, being a mom is the best job in the world for me. I'm very caring and nurturing by nature. So that's just been, my priority.
Now,
in life. But yeah, so I moved here in 2001. Actually, it was right before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
It was June of 2001. So it was definitely interesting when 9/11 happened because I was literally brand new, culture shocked.
in the Northeast? Were you living in the
I had
Northeast?
just started school. I went back to school. Yeah, I lived in New Jersey for a little bit and then moved to New York State. I lived in Middletown, like Catskills area.
I think Maurice's dad lives up there, to be
Really?
quite, or has lived there in the past.
Okay. It's
She
pretty.
would know. Yeah, she would know.
really pretty.
I'll have to- yeah, like we might have been up there actually.
Yeah.
Middletown. It sounds very familiar. Yeah, so it's nice up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ended up down here. Now, if we looked at Switzerland versus USA, is there like a big noticeable difference, change, anything that is just totally different between the two countries?
Yeah, it's completely different.
Completely.
Like Switzerland is one of the tiniest countries, I think, if not the tiniest that at least I know of.
Yeah.
It's really small. It's actually smaller than the state of Connecticut.
That's what I was going to see if we could compare it to one of our states.
Yeah.
So it's smaller than Connecticut.
Smaller than Connecticut.
Interesting. I mean, if America was broken up into countries, like Europe is like, instead
Right.
of having states, they have countries.
They have countries.
Yeah, but here it's,
Yeah.
I was thinking too when we went on a trip last year and we were so we flew to Las Vegas and then from there we went to Boulder City, which is by the Hoover Dam, which is in the desert. The desert where we're in. Anyway, so we went from that climate, we drove up to Utah, we were going through farmland, and then we ended up at a ski resort in August. So it was 85 degrees in the morning in the desert at one spot, then at nighttime it was 35.
It's really
And it
cold.
snowed. Yeah, so I was like, how is this the same country, It's
Yeah.
like we drove through 3 different countries in a 5-hour drive. Anyway, I thought that was, but then it makes me think about America and how all the different states are, like it's still one country, but every state is like its own thing, and then some, or at least some sections of the country have like certain things. But all right, sorry about that. Switzerland. Other than size, what are we talking? Raising kids differences, or like school differences,
It's a lot slower pace. So people are very private, very to themselves, more like serious. I remember coming here and everybody's so cheerful. And
really
Yeah.
happy people here, nice.
Yeah.
The Northeast is not known for that.
I know. But yeah, I didn't even notice it when I lived there, but when I went back to visit, I kept thinking like, geez, like, why are people so serious?
Yeah. So you have serious customers in Switzerland now.
Yeah. But it's very clean and it's beautiful, and we have the most amazing mountains, and I mean it's a really great place to live. I would love to live there again, but again, like,
Tough move now.
my kids are here,
Yeah.
so it's not happening.
What type of stuff did you do growing up?
Growing up, the one memory I have is we just go skiing
Yeah,
nearly every weekend.
every weekend
Like,
skiing.
every weekend. that was really cool. And I started really early when I was young. Like my dad actually carried me on his back when I was a baby.
I was
He
gonna.
would just like go down the slopes.
So that was just part of life. Now, is there any other things that you see those countries sometimes where you're in a colder climate,
Yeah.
and it would be like, yeah, the moms will put their babies outside in something, and that was just like a normal thing that to like harden them up, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of like in Switzerland? Is there like any kind of vibes? Like, do they parent or do they raise kids in a way that is like people over here would be like, oh my god, any of that kind of stuff?
I don't think
No
so. I think
differences?
it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
I mean, I was definitely raised in a very like strict household, and things were really tough growing
Yeah.
up. So, but I don't think it's much different than here.
What's the climate? If you were skiing every
kinda
weekend,
like
no?
here.
Is it not?
Like the Northeast.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now,
And yeah, but I lived in a small town, so we weren't like, it was kind of down in a valley, kind of
Yeah.
like here actually. We weren't like surrounded by the mountains, so when I lived there, I actually felt it was pretty boring. That's why I loved going up in the mountains.
Mhm.
That was always fun.
Skiing could be a little bit nasty. I feel like I've seen some nasty injuries. You have any scars, any war wounds?
I fell so many times,
Yeah.
tumbles, Then I got into snowboarding, and that was even worse because I would just,
I never did that.
I would just go on a half pipe with my
Oh,
brother,
really?
and
Dang.
just, I've always been
So what was that in the 90s?
crazy. Yeah, that was in the 90s.
So 90s, you said you've always been crazy. I know that as you then got a little bit older, I think the first time...
I'm a risk taker.
Right. Yeah. I don't mean you're actually crazy. Just in a crazy adventurous, maybe. I don't know. I mean, probably over 10 years ago, I feel like, just being in like the gym world and stuff, right? And you'd see or hear like, oh, this lady did that or this guy did that. And then I feel like one of the first times, I think, didn't you have some sort of success in an adventure race?
Yeah, the death race.
24. How many hours was that?
I think it was like 35 hours.
That's a great name for a race, a death race. So anyway, you said you were adventurous always, right? Where do you think that stems from? And then we're going to get into this death race thing.
I don't...
You were always, at 5-year-old you.
Yeah, I'm
Adventurous,
just a daredevil. Like,
Yeah.
I always... And maybe it's just being, I was the baby. I have two older brothers, and maybe there was sort of that influence from my brothers, who were pretty, they were pretty crazy. They were, So I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to like just be the girly girl growing up. I was always like rough and tumbling, going outside, playing in the woods with my brothers. Just, I had a few girlfriends, and sometimes we'd play dress up, but on average, I was
That wasn't
like
your style.
mostly with,
Yeah.
it was a little tomboy.
Causing trouble, So then now we're getting into teenage years, right? You're still in Switzerland. When does what kind of sports and all that? You end up being kind of like an aerobic.
I didn't do
athlete,
any
right?
sports growing
Anything
up.
growing up, nothing.
Nothing. I was an artist. I painted and I played the piano for 8 years. So I was really good at the piano, but no sports. I wasn't athletic at all, actually. But when I came here, I started running probably 7 years into me coming here.
Like mid to late 20s?
Yeah, I was going through like a really tough time in my marriage, and I really felt like I needed something for me.
Yeah.
And that's how I got started.
Cool.
Yeah.
So almost like a therapeutic tool, maybe?
It became, very much so.
So then you find out.
Running.
So what'd you do then? Did it start with like some small races here and there, or like?
Did
you just run for you?
I literally, I saw my neighbor running down the streets.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I remember I was like, I had just put my little ones down for a nap, and I was very unhappy with myself. Just felt so lost, confused, overwhelmed, burned out. And I sat on the porch to rest, and I see my neighbor, she's running, and I'm like, maybe I can run. I just like
Yeah.
spur of the moment. And I didn't even have any like running shoes or anything. I just laced my sneakers on, which, you know, I learned the lesson. You need good running shoes,
Yeah.
and you need, like, you know, moisture wicking socks.
Yeah.
I ended up getting blisters on my first day. But I also, like, I was not athletic at all, so, you know, the first run, it kind of hurt. But it was fun because I was doing something new,
Yeah.
and I was doing something that was just mine.
Mm-hmm.
That felt really awesome. And then I found out that the YMCA I was going to had a running club.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go to a running club.
Yeah.
Because then I can, you know, run with other people. And I did, like, my first run, and I had such a blast. Like, I started to get to know other people, and I just started running every day.
It's like a running community.
So that was in August when I started, and then in September I did my first 5K. I think I placed like first in my age group or something. It was weird. I was like, oh, really?
So you're pretty successful.
So I was, yeah, and it felt like, you know, I mean, a lot of people were telling me like, oh, you're so great at this. You're natural, you know. But I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
But I got like the you know, the running fever like pretty quickly. Like I went from my first 5K was in September, and then 2 months later I ran the Philly half marathon, and I literally had only run like 7 miles.
Yeah.
In training, and I knew nothing about running. I thought, oh, if I can run 7 miles, I can run 13.
Yeah.
And I just really.
Well, you did, right?
I did, but I ended up, I hit the wall at 10 miles.
And then what? Did you finish or not?
I had the nastiest pain in my hip. I was like, I felt like I couldn't keep going, but I had 3 miles left, and I started crying. And I'm like, I have to finish.
Sure.
So I just did my best,
To
and
walk it
I
out?
crossed the finish line.
Were you able to run, or did you just walk it out?
I think I jogged,
Yeah.
or I was just like limping, running, walking. I don't know. I got myself to the finish line, I think.
Well, I think the one friend that I think we both kind of know is Megan.
Yeah, I
she
love
was like-
Megan.
she was like,
She was on the.
yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
hiring a coach is important in your first, and so you don't have to learn those lessons.
I did not hire a coach, and I made all the mistakes. I got all the injuries, and I learned the hard way.
She told me the opposite, actually, that you would hire a coach for the first one, not get hurt, and then not hire a coach for the second because you think you know what you're doing, and then that's when you get hurt. But you just you made the mistake on the first round of it.
Yeah.
So that's only a couple months in. You're running half marathons and all that. So how does this thing progress then? Like what?
Marathon, from half marathon to marathon.
And then at that time too, I feel like in the early 2000s ish. Is that when this is like?
Yeah.
'Cause those adventure races blew up, right?
Yeah. I went from 5K to half marathon to marathon, and like I was literally so addicted that, and I'm just like,
Was it healthy?
you know, no. In retrospect, looking back, it wasn't.
Can you do that stuff and like kind of be healthy, in your opinion? Like, because I know it breaks down the body, right? It's hard to. Like,
I mean, healthy physically, I think I got away with a lot of stuff because, you know, obviously I was younger, but I was actually thinking emotionally wasn't really healthy either.
No, that's what I'm thinking.
It was good for me.
Because you said addiction, which is to me like a mental thing, right?
Yeah, it was really, you know,
So, that's why I
for
meant
me
it's
it was just like an outlet because I was so unhappy in my relationship, and I didn't even know who I was at the time. I grew up without a self of identity. And so the result was I would get lost in everything that I attempted to do. So I get lost in the relationship, I get lost in the job, I get lost in the, you know, and I kept searching for things.
Oh, that's interesting. So no real sense of identity. So you kept, you just whatever, almost like the next thing you got into became your identity for however.
And once I got, like, I found out I was good at running, and then I have so many friends that I'm making. I mean, it just felt awesome to me, but at the same time, it was great validation that obviously I was seeking.
Yeah.
Right. and on top of that, I wasn't conscious of it, but you know, when you lack that sense of identity within yourself, you constantly, unconsciously feel like you have to prove yourself to others. You know, you're like, oh, I'm gonna go get it. You know, and you're trying to really just fill a void on the inside because you want to make people proud. You want to make yourself proud. So, but all of this stuff was so unconscious I didn't even know about it. But, you know, I felt like finally I found something that I'm really great at, that makes me feel good, that just makes me feel accomplished. Let's just go for it, right?
Yeah.
And
it's healthy, it's
and
good
so
for
the
you,
marathon,
exercise.
of course, I always set the bar so high. I was like, first marathon, I'm qualifying for Boston, you know, and I missed it by like 26 seconds. I remember I was like really upset, but then I just kept going, you know, and I ran, you know, multiple races, and then I got into Spartan races. And
so how far did you push your mileage up in terms of, you did a marathon, which is 26 and some change, right? So did you ever, because I think after the adventure race, we started to hear a lot more about the 50 milers,
the
ultra type stuff, right?
yeah.
Did you dabble with that ever? Or?
I got into that, yeah.
Okay.
I did a few ultras. Really, it was a few years after, because I ran a lot of halves, a lot of full marathons, and then I started feeling really burned out. I mean, I had a coach by then, and I didn't have a great relationship with that coach, and I felt really burnt out, and I needed something different.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends that were going into ultra running, and it just felt like, hey, you know what? Let's do something different. Let's try something different. Let's try something new. So I went from the pavement to the trail to like the outdoors, running a lot slower pace, obviously, you know, but I was still pretty fast. So I did really great in the ultras too. Like the only thing that was difficult for me is that I'm so in the zone when I run. Like it was nearly like a form of meditation. I'd just zone in and I'd forget to eat. And you can get away with that. Like during the marathons, you know, you have gels and you're eating a gel every 40 minutes, you know, whatever. You're not really eating real food. When I got to the ultra marathon, suddenly now I'm running, you know, 50 miles, 80 miles. You can't just survive on gels. Like you're gonna end up bunking and
so you learned that lesson too, it sounds
hurting.
like.
But I always struggled with the fueling and managing everything.
Is that the top end, 80 miles?
I think the longest, I attempted the 100 and I didn't finish. I got injured during, like I broke my foot on one of the hundreds, in one of the hundreds.
During the race?
Yeah. And I ended up not making the cutoff.
But it's like, how far do you need to put? I always think about that. I was talking to Marisa yesterday. It's like, what were we talking about? I know Jeff Bezos was in there, Elon Musk, Taylor. This is what it was. College girls are here last Friday. What do you want to listen to? Taylor Swift, new album, 31 songs. And I'm just like, what? Like, when is enough? Like, when do you stop doing something? She's like ruling the world. She obviously must like it. And then I think about
2 albums.
Yeah, but it was like, it might have been over 31. I don't know what it was. But anyhow, I'm like, and then the people like Bezos with Amazon, it's like, when do you just stop? Is there ever a point? Like with the mileage that runners put in, it's like, all right, I did the marathon. Or I did the half marathon. You're happy. But then like, you know what? I think once in my life, I want to try to do a marathon.
Yeah.
And then you end up doing that. And then it just kind of keeps going. And
well, I'll tell you, I stopped when I realized that I kept chasing something. And I was tired of chasing stuff.
Yeah.
I just wanted to feel peaceful.
Those people have to be chasing something too, right?
I
think so.
I feel like, most people are chasing something.
Because this guy Walter.
And I'm not like, there's no judgment in that. It's just the reality of our society, right? Because I mean, we're conditioned to do that from the very beginning. I mean, you know, when you're, well, I mean, I was raised to continuously do more and have more, and but I didn't even know how to be. So
I think, so what you're saying there also kind of came up with like, there's such an emphasis sometimes with kids to be a high achiever in a lot of these different
there's
categories.
so much of that.
But then they they either identify themselves as either being an achiever, like, I am this, and with the moment they become not the best at something, it could kind of tear them down because they identify like, I'm a pianist, I'm in theater, I'm a great athlete.
Absolutely.
But also then it's they don't really build the self. It's building,
you don't,
it's
exactly.
checking these achievement boxes.
You're constantly separated.
Yeah.
There's such a separation. I mean, there's separation like in the world right now. There's so much you could see how it's becoming more and more clear that, you know, we're completely disconnected to ourselves. And I see a lot of like with my kids growing up, like I always made the point to let them know that I'm proud of you regardless of what you accomplish. You don't have to prove anything to me. You don't have to get a 4.0 average. You don't have to do anything because you're literally worthy just by being you. I think if you can give your child that feeling of belonging, that's priceless. Then they're gonna go out and they're gonna feel so confident in themselves that they're not gonna do things to fill a void on the inside, right? They're not gonna go out there and be like, oh, you know, I'm gonna make mom or dad proud because mom and dad are already proud of me, and it doesn't matter. So there's also less pressure then, right? You don't feel like, I feel like a lot of kids are feeling pressured right now.
And I think too,
and a lot of adults
are
feeling pressured.
I think it carries over. And I was going to say earlier, there's Walter Isaacson writes these like thick biographies on Einstein, Franklin, Da Vinci. Super interesting. Well, he did one on Elon Musk and was talking about it. And he talks about the demon, you know, and that there's a certain demon inside of him, and his father was tough on him growing up and all this other stuff, right? So when you said you were chasing something, and we're asking like, why is Taylor Swift still pumping out stuff, and all these people are chasing something, and then it went back to, in this guy's opinion, you know, there's this little thing inside of him that, you know, comes out and just kind of drives him to do all of these different things. And, you know, he stems back, I grew up in, I think, South Africa, and, you know, all this other nonsense, tough parents and blah, 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 right? So all of that stuff kind of planted the seed, what he referred to as the demon, and he's just constantly chasing, either running away from that demon or trying to do something to prove who he is, and I don't know. Validity, I mean, I don't know what the right word is. You know, we're always just looking for something, validation. But that thing too about the kids, I always think too, it's got to be authentic, right? You can't just say I'm proud of you if you're really not. Like if the kid's smacking everybody there in the play, screwing around, and you tell them you're proud of them, then what? You know, there has to be certain behavior. You know what I'm saying?
I'm proud of you.
You can't, the kids
even
flicking ears at everybody.
Asshole,
Like, you're my son, and I'm proud of you. I think that happens though. I think that happens too, where you blow smoke up a kid's rear end sometimes, and then they, like I just heard a story about a lacrosse player who teammates, he is a lower level player because he has some developmental stuff, so everybody is like, dude, awesome job, because he caught the ball, and for his level, for his like developmental level, this is impressive. You know, he's a kid that has, he needs more assistance with things. He's heard that and started thinking that he was better and was angry that he wasn't playing, and it led to a big kind of blow up with his parents and the coach, because the coaches are telling this kid, hey, you're doing awesome and all this other stuff, that the kid thought because he's doing awesome he should be playing. He's telling his parents that. His parents are seeing the kid not playing. And I was just like, wow, that's interesting. And it made me think about like even saying something to your child in any regard, like, oh, you did such a wonderful job. Even if they didn't, then they believe that they're wonderful. And people talk about like this, that term narcissist is always kind of thrown out. But that was like one thing that some people say, that like we are building kids that think they are great if you just tell them they're great all the time. So,
yeah, I mean,
it's gotta be legitimate. I'm not saying that you did that. I'm just saying I was using your example as a way to like
see that where you obviously
the kid needs to have good actions.
You want to be honest with your child, right? And kids also need, you know, boundaries, and they need structure, and like I feel there's, I know you're into the that more athletic world, with kids and stuff. I mean, I've seen it. My daughter was a gymnast for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff was leaving me just like shaking my heads because
Oh, that one's
everybody
nuts.
gets a freaking award these days.
Oh, really?
Like,
I thought it was the other way. I thought it was going to be too much, like push, 4 hours,
Well,
6 hours.
there's that,
Yeah.
but then there's also, I remember the award ceremonies were the longest part. They were sometimes, I felt they were longer than the actual meet because you literally have a 12th place winner, and it's just like,
what are we doing here?
like, what are we doing here? Yeah. I mean, first, second, third, maybe fourth, maybe fifth, but it would just keep going. And you have these award ceremonies where you have kids who were like 15th in place and who still have a podium. It's just like, well, what are we teaching kids? Like that, like you're just gonna get a medal now just because you participated. Like,
I think the main focus needs to be let's train and let's compete for progress, not for the ribbon.
right.
So I think long-term success is like we want to slowly get better. I don't want to compete poorly and take first because everybody else is not great.
And then the child continuously expect, it's just like if I go to a meet and I don't get a medal, then
I didn't do well. But maybe the competition, the competition's great. Maybe you got better. Like you could play good. When I used to coach football, you could play poorly and win a game. So it's like, do you really want to celebrate playing poorly?
Exactly.
You won, but you want to celebrate playing poorly. Or, you could play a great team, you could play a great game and still lose, right? Like you're allowed to be happy in that moment. We're making progress. We didn't get the result we wanted, but we're moving in the right direction. So it's like if you could focus on progress rather than whether or not you got a ribbon. Now it's
the
like
actual
ribbons,
achievement and like it's like the
growth or something.
You're basically teaching kids to focus on the end result instead of the journey and actually enjoying that.
Like an extrinsic reward too, like an external gift.
Absolutely.
It's like, are we competing here for the ribbon at the end of the day, or the whatever, ice cream and cookies or whatever they do after events, or are we going to compete to get better? And honestly, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because I think progress, if you're going to do something, it's like, let's just try to get better at it. Like, I think that's important. But it's like when you're 11 years old or whatever, even younger, 8 years old, and you got that 7th place ribbon. I mean,
and then if the child is conditioned to believe that they're going to get an award at every time and then they don't, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it just you're putting the focus on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And then the child grows up as an adult, thinking that they have to keep doing more in order to achieve, and it's just like.
And if they don't get something, that means they didn't do well. But
they didn't do
not
well
that.
enough, and then they start beating themselves up, and it's just like this constant toxic cycle that goes on and on and on.
There's one thing too that I see with stuff, and I'm like, they always talked about, say, I'll use football again just because I grew up with that, right? And somebody scores a touchdown, and they just give the ball, like a pro, give the ball to the referee and move on, right? He did what he was supposed to do. He gets the ball. Yeah. He's going to do whatever he can to try to get in the end zone. Mm-hmm. That's what he's supposed to do. You don't celebrate doing things that you're supposed to do, right?
Exactly.
So if you're supposed to go and do something, hey, I just, now I'm coaching track. I threw it 100 feet. All right. It's a new record. Like, good. That's what we're trying to do here. Like, I mean, we could be happy about it and all that, but now the next week, the next thing is 101. It's like, celebrate maybe in the moment, but move on. But you got to act like, you got to keep the end goal in mind. And I don't know, do you celebrate every sale that you make with like a donut party? I don't know.
You're not really teaching integrity when you're doing that, right? I mean, it's
a messy thing.
Yeah.
But so I don't know how we got down this path.
Well, we went from running marathons to going into.
It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters.
Stuff.
But anyway, doesn't matter. You got fired up about something. Now with also too, I just want to make sure. I think I probably said it, but I think any time that say you were training for a race or something, you were doing it for specific reasons that I think were more internally driven and not, the whatever's at the end. Is that accurate to say or no? Like, were you going for a reward, or were you like, was it more about chasing that goal? Or
I was really chasing the goal, and I wanted to continuously improve. but I feel like the need to improve was rooted in a lack that I felt inside. And so the thing is that because I wasn't conscious of it, I just kept going, and it's like you said, it's like, when does it stop?
Yeah.
When are you going to be okay with, because that's the other thing, and I think this is also something, well, I know it's something that a lot of runners experience, is you're so addicted to the running that, let's say you get an injury, you can't run anymore, you go nuts. Like, you can't live with yourself. You're moody, you're stressed out, you're annoyed, you go venting on social media, you don't know what to do with yourself.
A constant theme that comes up.
And I experienced that many
It's like
many
that's
times.
who you, when that is your identity and you lose your identity, it's trouble.
Exactly.
Talk to a wrestling coach about it. Like, if you're just a wrestler, wonder if that sport's taken away from you. Sports psychologist, same thing. One injury away.
Exactly.
Another lady.
And that happens with a lot of athletes, actually, because they root their identity in what they do, not who they are.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is it. Yeah. That's a common one, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a bit. And I always bring up this example about some Ivy League schools that I heard, where if you're an Ivy League student, your rates of depression and suicide are like, I don't want to say 7 times higher, but it's a few times higher than the national average. A lot of these kids identify themselves with being the best student, the top academic kid. Then they go there and they get their first B. There's 10 other kids smarter than them in the class, and they start to feel like their identity was being the smartest kid in the room, and now they're not that. If that student was involved in a club or a sport at the same schools, the rates of depression and suicide were just the same as the national average. There was no increase in it because they had a second thing. They didn't identify themselves with just that one thing. They had something else, and I think that's important. And it sounds like, when you were just running and you're training, now you get that injury. You take that away, and now it's like, whoa, now what do I do? Now who am I, or whatever. You lose your community of friends.
Who am I without that?
Not that you lose your community, but you're not connected to your community anymore.
Right.
If you had some training
it's like
partners.
you feel like shit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I mean, and this is why I got into life coaching, because like through my journey, I made so many realizations, and like I finally understood what was missing. And it's like it's literally with everybody. I mean, imagine like in the classroom, what if we could teach our kids to foster a deep sense of self, a deep sense of groundedness in themselves and who they are, so that if for some reason the sport is taken away from them because they get injured, or they go down a different path, that doesn't completely destroy them, right? They don't have to now go through all the anxiety and all the depressive thoughts that really you experience when you feel you've been robbed of like everything that you think you are, or whatever defines you, right?
Well, I think that brings up a point too, where you see some people, and I don't want to talk about like some dark stuff again, but like somebody that see on the surface everything. A wife that loves him, or a husband that's great, their kids, they have kids and all this other stuff with the great job. Then they take their life, or they do some destructive behavior, right? And it's like they don't even see that other stuff. Like, if you identify with one thing, and that one thing is maybe taken away from you, when you're kind of in that mood, I think it's like you're not thinking about all of the wonderful things in your life. You're thinking about how you lost like the most important thing to you. And so I think that I always like, I guess I don't know what the right word is for this, but when you see a story like that or something, it's like, well, and people are like, I don't want to say critical, but are like, oh, this guy had everything or something, but they didn't have kind of that whatever self-worth. Or
how can you I mean, yes, you have everything on the outside, but if you feel empty on the inside, then you really don't have anything.
And I think it goes back to that external reward thing too that we were talking about, where everything is like externally driven, right? And it's like, how does somebody define success or health or whatever, right? And it's a lot of stuff that's on the surface, but really I think, I don't know, I feel like the people that might have these longer, healthier mindsets in life, like I think their lives could potentially be extended if they are more focused on developing the self and being proud of who they are and whatever that might be, right? I want to ask you something though.
Sure.
I worked with middle school kids. You're a life coach. You want to build some sort of inner self-worth? Like, what would you put in there? I did something with them. We're trying to talk about things that aren't like with the weird stuff that you would think middle school health could be about. We're not touching on that. We're trying to build some resilient kids here. All right. So what would you tell some kids? I'll tell you what I did then afterwards, just to see what you think of it. But
So
you got a group of kids. You're
what
going
would
to
I
come in
do
there.
with middle school kids?
Middle school age kids. We're talking 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I got a mixed room right now.
Well, first of all, I do something fun and interactive.
Yeah.
Because I feel that that's so important. I mean, kids are so creative. They learn best, I feel, by being involved in things and by touching things and feeling things and just being a part of the experience. You know, nowadays, I mean, if you look at like the school system, you know, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like kids are sitting, listening to somebody talk. It's like boring as heck. So I'd probably do some kind of fun activity that
What would
would
the lesson? What would you touch
with
on?
a lesson that would really help them discover more about themselves. Like, what is it that makes you you? What is it that you actually enjoy doing? Or maybe, you know, what are the things that scare you? What are because there's so much that you can learn about yourself just through awareness, right? And this is really the main container that I offer, is really just building awareness, because a lot of people are just not aware of things around them. I was definitely not aware of what was going on in here, because I was constantly just like looking on the outside.
Yeah.
And I never focused on what was most important. So really just, I would just do stuff that would help them
Like identify who they
like
are.
identify with, hey, who am I? And actually celebrate that. Because nowadays, a lot of what's going on in schools is everybody wants to fit in. Everybody feels different. And so, you know, you have this thing that happens where, you know, you can't really be yourself, right? Because you have to look a certain way, you have to talk a certain way. And there's a lot of fear around authenticity and showing up as yourself. You know, there's a lot of bullying, there's a lot of criticizing and judgment. Like,
That term
kids
inclusion kind of gets thrown around too. And I mean,
well,
there's
inclusion and yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I told this group of kids, I was like, hey, you're not going to get accepted by everybody. And they're like, well, that's not right. And I'm like, it's actually just going to happen.
Well,
You're
and
not
teaching
gonna
them that it's okay.
Yeah, and then it
'cause you
went
don't
to, the
have
whole
to
lesson
be
was like, identify your core values, right?
Right.
And you don't move your core values to fit into a group. 'Cause
Exactly.
eventually you're going
You
to
stand by them.
Yeah, and you'll find the right
then
people
the right
eventually.
people
Yeah.
come to you.
I mean, that was the
They
lesson.
find you, really.
But it was like,
Yeah.
you know, just to even bring that up, it's like sometimes kids now are just told like, it is important to be kind to people, right? And especially the school that we're at, it's a Quaker school, so it's like, that's a big part of like the Quaker, you know, movement has been, they were at the forefront of abolishing slavery in this country and women's rights in the 1800s and all this stuff, right? It's just kind of what they do. And so, you know, being open and communicating and talking to people is important. And they grew up in families that do that. So they see that and they think that that is how it should be, but it's not. Unfortunately, like you're not always going to be included, accepted, and stuff like that. So I think telling kids that is, I'm like, well, I guess maybe I could be the person to use the games in PE and to reiterate it in a way, hopefully, that is like, the verbal side of things, right? I guess you want to try to sprinkle in the same idea a few different ways so it can stick with the different types of kids. But so that's kind of it. That's kind of in mind. The self-awareness part of it is kind of identifying your core values, right? Almost like who you are. Let's be aware of who we are. I guess you have to be honest with that. Now, when does self-awareness and, you know, hey, I'm bad at, let me think here. Oh, I'm bad. We were talking about texting people, right? And not getting, hey, I'm bad. I'm bad at getting back to people or something. Or I'm bad at, you know, giving my friend something. Or I don't always do this. Like the self-awareness versus being negative. Like that negative self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be some sort of balancing act. Do you ever tell people like, hey, stop saying that about yourself?
Well, you
it's
can
kind of
have self-awareness and accountability, but still honor yourself. You don't have to be negative. So you could be like, oh, you know what? I noticed that I tend to not respond to people in a timely manner.
Just reframing it in a more
You're
positive way.
reframing it.
Right.
It's all about reframing, because it's like choosing your words. Like, you know, I struggled with negative talk.
Yeah.
I mean, that was all that was running in my head constantly. So you just reframe it, right? It's you don't have to be fake or, you know, like start pretending that, you know, or making excuses or anything like that. You just reframe the thought so that instead of beating yourself up, you're now choosing to do things differently, and you are now, instead of being a total failure, you're actually a work in progress, right? So it's just about choosing your words.
There was to bring running in, I don't remember the study details, but it was like hills, say for example, and if you just gave yourself that talk instead of saying, oh, hills suck, like
Right.
I love running hills.
Exactly.
I'm gonna kill it on this hill.
You know, you could say, oh, you know, I suck at this thing, whatever it is, right? Or you could say, you know what, I just started and I'm getting better every day.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the truth, right?
It is, yeah. I guess if you try.
So just be honest.
If I don't try to get back to people in a timely fashion, then that's not working towards anything. Maybe, I don't know. That's a poor example, but there's got to be some action, right? Some guy told me last weekend.
And accountability, like,
accountability is a good way to put it.
understanding too, like why is this happening?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe you're just burning the candle at both ends, and you're super stressed, and you're not making time for. You can't make time for everybody, and then yourself, and maybe you're just like stretched out too thin. So
I think sometimes there's a lot of stuff going on too, where you don't even know where to start. So you're just like, kind of push it all the way.
Well, that's avoidance, right?
There you have it. Somebody did I was telling somebody today about, she was like, oh, my knee hurts. I was like, ballet when I was like whatever age. And I was like, yeah, I had the shoulder injury for like 13 years. I never got it checked out. And my physical therapist friend was like, avoidance is not a solution.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I mean,
that's
avoidance
a good point. That's a good point.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you just don't want to deal with it.
So we got, if we went from, I do want to talk about that death race just because I don't know anything about it.
That was fun.
Is that sarcasm or was that legitimate fun?
No, it was really fun.
All right, so you're saying 30
I actually
hours.
really enjoyed it, and I think
what
I ended up second. I was winning the race, and I made a mistake. I was supposed to go up the mountain. Like, we climbed that mountain. I don't even remember.
Was it a loop
like
that you just ran a
12
bunch
hours
of times?
of going up and down the mountain. Yeah,
Okay.
it was in Vermont too. It was really steep.
Sorry, but is that how it was set up? It was a loop that you had to run as many as you possible?
It's the death race is unlike anything else. It's not like a loop that you repeat over and over. That the last part was, yes, you gotta go up the mountain, down the mountain, because we were actually making a puzzle. So you had to go up the mountain, get your piece, come downstairs, put the piece down on the table, go back up, and I don't remember how many.
Hopefully it was like a 6-piece puzzle for like first.
No, it was like I think it was a 12 or 15-piece puzzle, something like that. So the last piece, I actually had to. I forget exactly what it was, but I think I had to take the entire puzzle up and put the last piece on the last one, or do something, but I made a mistake. And by the time I got down the mountain, they were like, you forgot your puzzle. And I was like, shit. So I had to do an extra loop, and the girl that was, behind me obviously caught up, because, I had to do an extra loop. So I ended up second, but it just didn't matter. Like, I was, it was like a lot of fun.
Well, when you're in how do you follow directions and stuff?
It was hard.
Like, you said when you run, you sometimes would get in these zones.
Well, I was hallucinating, like, towards the end. I was like out of it. I remember I had this thing where every time I would come down the mountain, I was just so out of it. Like I had no energy. I was just stumbling and just like, ugh. I would ask for a can of Coke, and I would just grab the can of Coke and drink the Coke all the way up the mountain, come down, get another Coke, and
Wow.
that's how I was
Staying energized
staying
with some
energized.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. I
But
mean,
it
that
was,
doesn't sound
yeah.
like, it's funny some of these races sound
It was
like a prison camp. Jesus.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it again. Like I know people who did the death race with me years ago who are still doing it now. They're still, doing the events, and I just like,
Time to move on.
yeah.
Enough's enough. Maybe returning to that theme.
I'm just having fun.
So all this
in other
stuff,
ways.
we circle all this stuff, right? You were kind of always chasing something.
Yeah.
You get to the death race. After that, you're still running races. You're still pursuing endurance goals, right?
Yeah.
And then what was that one thing that was just like, you know what, it is time to put an end? Like, what made you have that change of mindset or that shift?
I just got knocked out twice.
Literally, right?
Hmm?
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did it happen?
The first time was in 2019. I was running this just beautiful winter day. It was snowing. It's like my favorite part about running is like, when you have those days, like really quiet, it's snowing and nobody's out. And I was like, I want to go for a run. And it had been like, it was in February. And I remember that year we had tons of ice. But there was about 2 inches probably on the trail, and I went out for a run, and I think I was probably like a mile away from my house. I was running the trail, and I slipped on a sheet of black ice, and I just landed like flat on my back, and then my head hit the concrete. And
blood and all
I
that,
just
no?
I just remember, I think I maybe lost consciousness for like, I don't remember how long. I just remember I had my dog with me, and I'm waking up and my dog's licking my face, and
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, what's going on? And I felt like this intense pain like in my like upper body, and I remember I'm like, oh shoot, it's snowing. I was getting cold, and I'm like, I gotta go. And I tried getting up and I couldn't get up. I was in so much pain, so I kind of rolled myself to the side, and then I don't even know how long it took me to get up, but eventually I did, and I started walking, and I'm like, okay, I just gotta go home because this was brutal. And I just had like intense back pain, but it didn't hit me until like 2 days later, where I just, massive concussion. And
So what were these symptoms? Like memory loss and headaches, or?
Yeah, I had all the symptoms, like memory loss, massive headache, photophobia, which is a sensitivity to light. I just locked myself in my room.
Was there like
Shades.
low energy, depression type mood?
Yeah, I mean, it progressed. It felt like just the headaches were nonstop, and it's
So
not just your
February?
regular headache. It's like the worst migraine you've ever had in your
How long?
life.
Like you said, February, the fall?
February.
You had headaches then for weeks, days, months?
Months.
Really?
Yeah.
And then when was the second?
And that was hard for me too, because I had heard of like, being in the running world and knowing other athletes, like, most people were like, you'll be good in 2 weeks, just rest. And it didn't go away. Like I was still struggling. But I think a few months later, I started running again, and I started training for, I think it was like, I think I started training for a 100-miler. But in retrospect, I wasn't completely, recovered. I think I went into the training a little too quickly. But I remember feeling really good by the end of, towards the end of the year. And then I got into another accident. Like I was driving with a friend, and we were on the highway, and there was a construction zone. So, you know, when you're on the highway and they have construction zones, typically there's tons of, you know, these orange signs everywhere for miles. You know, they alert you way ahead of time, because there was actually a full stop. They had like massive construction, and there was a full stop on the highway. So they let you know, like, full stop, 2 miles, get ready. And by the time I got to the construction zone, you know, I'm just sitting there at the stop sign, and I'm talking with my friend, and then this guy came flying, like he must have been texting or not paying attention, and he slammed into the guy that was behind me, and then the guy behind me slammed into me, and I remember my head going like, and just I had that feeling like, this is not good.
Yeah. So when was that?
That was in October of 2020.
So a year and a half, roughly?
Yeah. No, less than, well, February. Yeah, a year and a half, yeah. And I remember getting, like, I was probably 2 hours from my destination. I got there. Literally 4 hours after I got there, I started feeling like nauseous, throwing up, massive headache, just really bad. And I kind of knew, I'm like, crap, I think I got another concussion.
Yeah. So you drove after the accident?
I think my friend drove back.
Yeah.
And when I got home, it was so bad.
Yeah.
I ended up in bed, and I actually, that one was way worse. I couldn't even get up. I couldn't walk normally. I couldn't do anything.
For how long?
I couldn't cook. I had a massive migraine for 30 days straight. And yeah, it was really tough. I just couldn't function. So probably for the first month, I was just laying in bed. Then I would, you know, start walking, but I had so many issues with like my balance, and I went to see a lot of like holistic practitioners, like chiropractor and stuff, because obviously I got a CAT scan. I didn't have a brain bleed, none of that stuff, but I had like massive issues in like my neck. I dealt with chronic pain for years after that, and you know, it just, every time I would start running, it would just trigger these headaches, the pain, the migraines, the photophobia, the loss of memory, the confusion. It was hell. And then, you know, that was during COVID too, so.
That's in October, so we're talking November, December,
yeah,
January,
I mean, you're talking
February,
like
months.
I struggled for years with treatment. I did HBOT therapy.
What is that?
It's like the hyperbaric
Oh, yeah.
oxygen
Cool.
therapy.
Did that help?
That
It's supposed
helped,
to.
but
Well, in theory, I've heard that it
it helped a lot.
Like an NFL guy,
It
like
helped a
20
lot.
years ago, claims that was like his way of preventing long-term brain trauma. But I imagine there's studies and stuff on it. Yeah, it's supposed to. Yeah.
But yeah, I was really depressed. I was so depressed, and that's when I started meditating, because I couldn't do anything else.
So you had this, right? We're talking, you know, February, and then you had the other one in October.
Yeah.
COVID. Now that is going to extend into 2021, 2022 range, and then you stumble upon a meditation of a
Well, it was
specific
in
type,
2020. It was during that first month where I was literally like bedridden, and I was going nuts. I was going crazy. I was frustrated. Like, I can't do anything. Same type of stuff, right? I'm useless. I can't even take care, like cook a meal for my children. Like, it's just like everything's being taken away from you. What's left?
Yeah.
And you don't have a sense of self. Like, so it's like literally God like knocked me out and was like, you need to do the work. And I know you keep going, doing all the things. You never stop, you never rest, you never take time for yourself. Okay,
so
this is what's gonna happen.
I mean, it's not the same at all, but I had that same kind of thought when I just had shingles a couple weeks ago. And I was like, you know what? It's probably stress related. And I think I get sick. Things happen when you don't just take care of yourself. And
I
it's
got
just
sick
like,
multiple times. I
like
got
a karma.
hernias. I got
Isn't
like
it?
so many things
It's
from
like you get
stress.
smacked, like you said, and they're like, if you don't take time for yourself, we'll find something that will make you take time.
So in retrospect, it was like, you know, when the thing happens to you, you go into like, oh, poor me. Why is this happening? Da da da. You get angry. You get frustrated. Now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, this was like a divine intervention.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Good. What do you do? So how did you get out of the funk? Let's get into it.
I started to meditate, and that's something that I had wanted to do, but
guided or on your own? You just sat in a room.
I could never meditate. Yeah.
Did you listen to?
I did guided meditations at first. Yeah, because like literally, it was really uncomfortable for me to just lay down and do nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, you know, so you start, I'd start with like 5 minutes. Okay, another 5 minutes, another 5 minutes. Then suddenly now I can sit still for 10 minutes and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it's working.
Yeah.
And when I would do when I would lay down in the hyperbaric chamber, that was typically 60 to 90 minutes. I'd literally just take my phone, my earbuds, and I'd set like an hour meditation, and I just like
yeah, that's cool.
And
that's awesome.
It really helped
it's like a
with
double
the
dose
healing
of healing.
process. Yeah, it really helped the healing process. And then, you know, as you're meditating and spending time with yourself, now you're investing in your thoughts. You start listening a little bit more to like what's going on. And you know, I was reading a lot of Joe Dispenza books because I was really wanting to not feel like I always had to search for something to complete me. Like I was just tired of like running. I mean, literally running. Running to like find the thing that was gonna make me happy. You know, and that's when I found like it's already all inside of you. You know, you just have to tap into that.
Yeah.
Like the average person has everything that they need, so much, the potential, the resources, the power, but we're so focused on, you know, conditioned on, you know, seeking for stuff on the outside, because that's I mean, society.
Yeah.
Right?
But I mean, that's like, I think this is another recurring theme is this one book. It's called Less Innocent Blood Be Shed, right? And it was during World War II. There was a French couple, Magda and Andre Trocmé. They were housing and allowing their home or their church to move, you know, Jewish refugees through there. Well, one night the Nazi guards come, knock on the door. They're gonna arrest Andre, and the wife Magda offered them dinner. And then they asked later, like, hey, why would you? These people were more than likely gonna kill your husband. They didn't. He somehow maneuvered his way out. But they were like, why would you do that? And she was like, well, they're human beings, and at any moment in time, like, they can be redeemed, you know? Like, that one kind gesture could have been the one thing that kind of turned them into a different person the next day, right? So as I was reading that and thinking about that, I'm like, all human beings have these the ability to do, like, incredible things for good and for bad, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, so, you know, I was telling that to some kids, too, the other day, where I'm like, you're humans, all right? I don't want to hear this, whatever you're talking about. These people did all these great things, all right? You don't have to do that, but you're still a human. They're a human. Like, you're capable of doing this. Like, you're capable of throwing a javelin, you know, or whatever the example was. It's like, so I think that's important too, where, and then honestly just believing that, right? And it might have taken that, you know, divine intervention on your end to just believe like, hey, I can do this, you know? I don't need to be setting records, winning races, accomplishing these goals on the outside.
Because there's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with running or aspiring to be better or progressing or winning medals or, you know, doing stuff that you love doing. But if it's at the cost of your own sense of self, your identity, your like the joy that you feel inside, like, then obviously, you know, like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
And then this like moment of clarity that you have, how do you use this kind of now with what you do with work? Basically, I
I
guess
just
we didn't even say what you
use
did. I mean, you said you were a life coach, right? But who are you working with primarily, and what kind of problems do you typically navigate? Is there a niche, or do you kind of cover a large area of things?
I work primarily with women in midlife
Yeah.
because I literally found myself at 35 years old. You know, I had left everything that I knew in Switzerland, moved to the United States, started a brand new life, started fresh, got married, had kids. I wanted that American dream, the life, the beautiful house, and the husband and the family. I really wanted it all.
I'm watching too many movies.
And
I don't know if that exists. I'm just kidding.
and when that crumbled, I literally, you know, I remember just feeling like, God, like I'm 35 years old, and I literally I felt like I was losing everything, you know, including time with my kids, because now I was a single mom and I had to hustle and go, you know, work multiple jobs to be able to pay my bills, and, you know, because I had to fend for myself and take care of my kids. And I mean, there's all of this stuff, like life became a total nightmare. And I had to figure out how to heal my heart, change my mindset from, you know, just literally, I didn't even know who I was. I had no sense of confidence, or, you know, I just was surviving, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I was surviving, and I was extremely unhappy.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think a lot of people that I know, especially parents that we run into, they're just kind of like, it's work, it's pick up
and
the
it
kids,
doesn't
students,
necessarily
it's
have
that.
to be a divorce. It could be a career change. It could be, you know, like a lot of people are going through grief. A lot of people lost loved ones through COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of people had career changes through the pandemic. So much changed since the pandemic, and everybody's trying to adjust and do their best, but yet there's still so many pressures of the daily life. How are you supposed to focus on yourself when you have to literally take care of everybody else around you? You know, like be financially like stable.
You can't just quit your job to take
You
care
have
of
to
yourself,
do
right?
all the things,
yeah.
and then your mind is, you know, I mean, I was constantly like beating myself up, and I had anxiety attacks, and I was like, so I would cry myself to sleep every night. I mean, it was freaking hell. Like, I'm like, how am I going to do this? I have no idea. I didn't have the tools or the skills, like the mindset to even, I didn't believe in myself. So, you know, I would pretty much take what I got. And then I was frustrated and I was angry because I'm like, well, this is not the life that I want. Like, I was really angry at myself. Like, I just, you know, I had a different idea of what I wanted life to look like. And I think a lot of people are in this situation where they're like, is this all there is to life? I mean, am I really just supposed to be busting my butt, working 60, 80 hours a week to just, you know, get a paycheck? And then what do I live for? When I go to work, I commute, I'm trying to make ends meet. And when do I get to live? When I'm 65 or whatever the retiring age is? I don't even know what it is anymore. But it's just like, you know, like I always knew I had an idea of what I wanted for my life. I just didn't know how to get there. So I had to figure it out on my own. And this is when I got into personal development and growth, and I'm reading books and I'm listening to podcasts. I remember I was going on YouTube, like how to like listening. I was into Tony Robbins, was like the first guy that I found on YouTube, because obviously, like, he's, you know, #1 guru, life coach, whatever you want to call him. But
I watched the documentaries.
But I learned a lot from him. Yes, I
doesn't
watched
want to be
that
called
too
that.
on Netflix. Yeah, and I started like rewiring like my thoughts and my brain and understanding things. But it was a very slow progress. It was like one step forward, 2 steps back. And then I have all this drama with my ex and the custody battles and the attorneys and the debt piling up. I mean, it's freaking hell.
That's a lot of families. I mean, just this morning,
It's a lot.
talking with Marisa, I'm like, man, a lot of these kids I'm working with, they're from split homes.
Split
She's
homes,
like,
like,
that's 50%. It's over 50% of the population. I was like, that's true.
it's
So it won't exclude. That's
so much pressure.
doesn't exclude like the kids that I work with. So I was just trying to keep that in mind. As kids just navigate. They have tough times at certain periods in their life, right? And then you try to think and you try to take into account maybe stuff's going on at home, maybe this, that, you know. So try not to be, you know.
Right.
I don't use one bad week or month from a kid to like identify kind of who they are. I just kind of try to clean slate it every day. But in thinking about that, it's like, you know, the home life is different. You know, they could be from a split home. Their parents could literally be going through.
And not
divorce
even
right
just split homes, but a lot of the times it's abusive homes
Yeah,
I mean, you go home, but you still don't, you have mom and dad, but it's not a safe place because mom and dad are constantly arguing, because mom and dad are stressed out, because mom and dad are trying to do the best that they can. And it's like, it's really difficult. And that's what I experienced as a child.
stuff.
And a lot of stuff. And then, you know, I got into another abusive relationship. So it's just like,
Do you
in
think
order
you
to
repeated
recover from that.
Did you repeat that
absolutely.
because you grew up in it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're almost attracted to. Well, I guess that's what you think a relationship is, right? You know, whatever you see growing up.
Whatever is modeled to you, that's what you're going to end up repeating. And
Isn't that crazy?
so, yeah.
I mean, I think that's really, it's probably pretty accurate. But yeah, it is crazy.
Yeah, that's what also I found in relationships, is that the partner that you attract is literally a mirror for you, in the way that whatever unresolved wound that you've experienced as a child, right? Whether, you know, you had like a father wound or a mother wound, you're gonna, like, unconsciously, you're attracting the partner that is going to reflect that wound. Because what I learned is that the inner child inside of you is always seeking to heal, to repair that wound. So a lot of the times you end up attracting a partner that has a lot of similarities with your father or your mother, or whatever hurt you when, you know, you were growing up. So for me, and then you also attract what you've been modeled. So it could be really confusing, but
Sounds confusing.
But like the more you shed light on, you know,
Like what you're trying to heal, almost?
right?
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of like creating awareness around, hey, what am I dealing with here? Because there's a lot of beliefs that I had that were unconscious. Like they were limiting beliefs. They were holding me back, but I didn't know that they were holding me back. So the awareness work is in finding out, hey, what's really going on here? Because you think you suck at something, but there's something underneath that, right? It's kind of like when you're training, we're just talking about how when you're training people who want to lose weight, people are like, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds. And they focus on that 10 pounds. So what do? They go out and they go get healthy food and they start an exercise program. Meanwhile, they're not dealing with what's underneath that.
They lose the 10. Let's say they are successful in losing the 10. There's still that hole, right?
Absolutely.
So it's in there. And
it's
then
going to show up somewhere else.
Or
you're going to put the weight back on, which is what a lot of, you know, and I was a personal trainer for a long time. So I dealt with a lot of the cycles of like, I don't know how to create a lifestyle for myself and it's never about the food. It's never about the exercise. It's never about anything that's outside of you. It's always about what's going on inside of you. And until you deal with that, you're going to keep repeating the same patterns, behaviors, and, you know, same beliefs.
I agree.
So,
I'm with you. Now, how do you put this into play then? You said you're launching. You got some stuff going on these days, or what are you working with there?
I work mainly one-on-one with people.
In person?
I love that private container of just being able to really focus on that person. But I'm working on launching now a group coaching community.
Cool.
Because there are people who maybe are not necessarily able to invest in one-on-one coaching, which is, you know, obviously a higher price, but also the benefit of having a community is that you can now not only connect with other people who are going through the same struggles or similar struggles, you can also learn from other people, and you just have that sense of belonging, which I think is like really cool. Because one of the worst things that I experienced when I was going through my stuff is I felt alone all the time. And that also contributes to you becoming more of a victim, because if you start telling yourself like I'm alone, like, and you look at everybody else and everybody else seems to be fine and doing good, right? Then now you're like, well, why me? Like, why is it me? Like, what's wrong with me? And you go down that rabbit hole, and it's over, man. I mean, it's like,
and then now it's too, it's social
really
media.
hard.
You see the way that people are living on the surface, but so then you're just like, wow, their life's awesome. I'm not going on these vacations. I'm not doing this. Meanwhile, that person could be the most depressed person in the world, and we don't know it because you only see the good online, right? There's this.
There's a lot of that.
Some sort of social disorder, anemone, I think was the term that I was just listening to a book this morning. Emil Durkheim wrote this in like 1897. I don't know the term. I don't even know if it's a real word, but it's some sort of social. It was about suicide in 1890s, right? So this guy Durkheim wrote about it, a social scientist or sociologist, whatever. But it was just kind of like that loss of a disorder in one's like society, I guess, and that probably, it sounds to me like lack of belonging, not feeling like they belong, leading to stuff. And then even now, my age group, say 35 or 49, males, deaths of despair, which is suicide, alcohol-related death, and drug alcohol and drug overdosing, and then like alcohol-related death. It's almost like doubling every 4 years. I don't know, the stats are ridiculous, right? But it's like the #1 killer now, people in my age bracket. I'm pretty sure of that. I gotta confirm that. I don't want to be spitting out fake information, but I'm pretty sure it overtook
get canceled.
It overtook like heart attacks, as like the #1 killer of 35 to 49, right? So it's people are missing something, they're lacking something. The sense of belonging, I think, is probably at the root of it all. But they are missing something, they're trying to fill a hole. So just got to keep fighting the good fight.
It's huge.
So that's what we're trying to build with the kids, so they don't get down that path as adults.
And I've thought about that a lot, and I definitely think in my future there's going to be a lot more of that, because I notice the difference in my kids, in the way that now, the conversations that I have with them and all that, really just building that sense of self and the self-confidence, and while helping them understand that, yes, of course you want to be kind, and you want to be able to be respectful, and all of those, like, those are the core values, like, right, basic core values. But then at the same time, like, have healthy boundaries, and set those boundaries, because they're gonna really set the path to success for you. Like, I feel like, one of the biggest things I see kids struggling with is, not feeling like they're good enough, and constantly feeling like they have to compete with others. And that's like, I think the ultimate separation is like, you don't even see how special, worthy, like, the gifts that you have inside. Like, so to be able to, like, I would love to actually work with kids and really help them understand, like, how valuable they are. But it's because at home
you need that too. It's almost like different phases, like say you're working with people now, midlife,
so that you build a sense of confidence.
You need on the front end with the kids, but I think there's also another phase where, like, right after college, where you're trying to get a job, and you're like, now I got I'm only getting offer for this amount of money, and this person's getting that, and I don't know how I'm going to do this, and I thought I would do better. I didn't get the job. I think there's like different stages in life, and I think we need people at different stages.
Definitely.
You need people on the front end of stuff. You need people in the middle, the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. And then you need people, maybe kids are out of the house now or whatever, and it's like, now what do you do? I mean, your self-worth, maybe you were tied in, you were a parent for 20 years, right? Now the kids are gone. It's like, now who am I?
So that's coming for me. And I have my best friend also has teenagers, and she has a few more years. Her older daughter went to college last year, So now she's left with one, her other daughter. And we talk about that a lot. And it's like there's nearly that little bit of anxiety that you're feeling, because it's like, oh, now once the kids are out of the house, I mean, it's like empty nest syndrome. Like a lot of parents are going through this, and it's the hardest transition, because as a parent, you've been living for your kids. You've been giving everything to raise those kids. But again, then you've also been ignoring you, which is actually not the best thing that you can do, because you want to be able to model to your child that you have to continuously invest in yourself. Like, don't lose yourself in anybody. Have that like strong foundation within yourself, so that, hey, when the kids are gone, I'm set. I am excited about this next phase, instead of being like, well, what do I do with myself now? My kids are not there, and I'm like, I don't know who I am, and like now you have an existential crisis, and you're depressed, and you're just like, literally, I mean, there's a lot of anxiety that can come from that. It's hard for a lot of parents who are going through that. So yeah, I talked to my friend a lot about that. It's like, hey, you need to start investing in yourself, because when your daughter leaves, it's an empty house. And what are you gonna do? Like,
that is a question.
Who are you? It's not so much what are you gonna do, because you could go and do a ton of stuff, but it's like, who are you other than the mom? Who are you other than the wife? Who are you other than that? And I feel like a lot of people don't really know. You know, you have all of these roles that you're playing, but if you don't really know who you are, like, let's say all of this disappeared, would you be okay? That's a deep question, right?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Totally. There was I think I bring this up, but it was like, you know, if you have all your stuff in one room and that room gets destroyed, like, then what? You know, I think it's kind of like that same idea. I think you need to have multiple things,
and we get so attached. I mean, and of course, I'm attached to my kids, but at the same time, I've had to detach myself from being attached to them, because that's what we're supposed to do.
They need time too, right? I'm listening and I read a bunch. It's like, you know, the kids need time. They don't need their parents around all the time.
No.
So it's like, take some time for yourself.
Especially during
the
teenage years. And I mean, that's another thing that
not let them run wild,
we hear a lot with moms. They're just like, oh, I've just been, and I remember there was a time I had a little bit of resentment, because I was literally like, well, I gave my entire life to you, and I'm always here for you, and I'm always providing, and now you don't want to have anything to do with me, you know, like, you're just like, well, what the heck? And then I had to realize, like, this is a me problem, because I'm enabling that to happen, and it's not fair to them. Like, they're not responsible for me, you know. So it was for me to like start reframing that and actually invest in stuff that I want to do.
That's good.
And now it's cool. Like, you know, if they don't want to have dinner with me every night, okay, cool. Do your thing. They need to spend that time on their own too. They want to have their own life.
Identity too,
like,
and
be
a kid and have some unstructured time where they can navigate things and handle whatever life has to throw at them. Right, Flo? I think it's time to wrap this bad boy up. Is that cool? You got any questions for me or anything? Are we good?
No, we're good.
All right, good.
Thank you so much.
I didn't forewarn you that you could ask me questions, so that means we'll skip it. All right, everybody, thank you. See you later.